The dinosaurs are such an iconic group of prehistoric animals that gave rise to some of the most awe-inspiring predators of all time. But this lineage of reptiles was not the only chapter in the great history of life on Earth. Hundreds of millions of years before the first dinosaurs evolved, Earth was home to a whole host of very different, yet still formidable predatory animals. So let's take a trip back through time to explore the apex predators of our planet before the dinosaurs truly rose to dominate the terrestrial environments. We'll travel period by period, featuring a few examples of the top predators of each slice of prehistory, and their incredible anatomy and adaptations that enabled them to top the food webs of the times. First of all, we're travelling back more than 500 million years to a period of time known as the Ediacaran. Life during the Ediacaran was a far cry from the world we're used to today, but it was during this part of Earth's prehistory that multicellular life first became truly complex and widespread. The Ediacaran biota, the name given to the organisms alive during this time, mainly comprise small, soft-bodied creatures that inhabited the sea floor and came in a variety of shapes, including circular, segmented forms that moved about slowly and fed on microbial mats, as well as immobile organisms that looked like small fronds projecting from the seabed, plus many other kinds of early life. For a while, it was thought that the Ediacaran biota did not really feature any true animal predators, and that these ecosystems remained relatively simple until the following Cambrian period. During the Cambrian, a so-called explosion of evolution occurred, starting approximately 538.8 million years ago and giving rise to most of the major lineages of modern animal groups. So the older Ediacaran, it was thought, stayed pretty simple and full of now extinct side branches of organisms, until that tipping point was reached. However, more recent finds of Ediacaran fossils suggest that things were not quite so simple back then. Evidence of increased mobility, burrowing behaviours in some organisms, and even the appearance of some predatory animals in the Ediacaran hint at a much more lively world, and a more gradual slide into the complexity and radiation of life that followed in the Cambrian period. One of the examples of an Ediacaran predator is an ancient kind of Cnidarian, the major group that includes jellyfish and corals. Called Aurora lumina attenborei, this creature had simple yet densely packed tentacles enclosed within a rigid organic skeleton that would have been cemented to the ocean floor. At just 8 inches tall, Aurora lumina would have used its numerous tentacles to capture passing plankton in the water, and therefore may have been feeding on an early kind of prehistoric zooplankton, tiny animal life that floated in the water column. As such, this jellyfish relative from around 560 million years ago could be considered one of the first animal predators on the planet. The discovery of traces created by Scelidophorans some 539 million years ago also adds to the emerging picture of the Ediacaran as a more hostile time than previously imagined. Scelidophorans include various living members of marine invertebrates, many of which are quite worm-like things, including the aptly named penis worms. Scelidophorans were certainly predatory animals during the periods following the Ediacaran, hiding in sediment and then inverting their hook-covered proboscises out to capture prey. So evidence of their activities in the Ediacaran suggests they were already feeding on other animals even back then. So yeah, it turns out you can tell all your friends that some of the oldest top predators on the planet may have been penis worms, or relatives of them at least. What a fantastic world we live in. Fast forwarding a few million years to the Cambrian period, this stretch of time witnessed the emergence of the animals commonly considered the planet's first apex predators. These were the radiodonts, a fantastic group related to the arthropods that includes the famous Omnidens. These marine predators were giants for the time, with some, such as Amplectobelua, achieving total body lengths of around 90 centimeters or 3 feet. The largest known radiodont was Ediacaran, however, known from fossils found in Morocco that suggest it was a filter feeder. This beast could grow to more than 2 meters in length, over 6.6 feet. The evolutionary arms race triggered by the Cambrian explosion of life meant that this time period saw the relatively rapid appearance of all kinds of new organisms with various hard parts to defend themselves from the new predators on the scene. Omnidens, everyone's favourite giant shrimp of death, would have been a formidable predator of the mostly much smaller animals it shared its environment with. Moving itself through the water by undulating its paired flaps, it would seek out its prey using its acute vision provided by the compound eyes mounted on stalks, before seizing its selected victim with its raptorial front appendages and pulling them towards their pineapple ring mouths. Although Anomalocaris has long been reconstructed as the terror of the trilobites, utilizing its appendages to grab these marine arthropods and flex their exoskeletons until breaking point, recent work has shown that the spines on the appendages would not have been strong enough to withstand the forces involved with crunching trilobites. As such, Anomalocaris was probably a predator of soft-bodied prey instead. So trilobites were safe from this apex hunter, but softer animals that swam about in the water column would have lived in fear of the shrimp of doom, especially as it seems it was an efficient swimmer at high speeds. The even larger radiodont Amplactobelua, which lived around 518 million years ago, exhibits some intriguing modifications to its frontal appendages, such as an enlarged spine protruding down and forwards to essentially form a pincer. Another of the terrifying top predators during the Cambrian was a creature known as Omnidens. This animal has had a rather convoluted classification history with a few different interpretations of what it might really have been, since it was only known from mouthpart fossils for a long time, though some bits of appendage have also been discovered now. The most recent reinterpretation of this creature posits that it was closely related to the arthropods, and potentially resembled the much more completely known Pamdelurion, but at a larger scale, reaching about 1.5 meters in length or 4.9 feet. As such, Omnidens likely resembled the radiodonts in that it possessed paired body flaps for locomotion and had raptorial appendages, as well as a circular mouth with several rings of needle-sharp teeth. If Omnidens really did achieve this sort of size, then this beast can undoubtedly be considered another apex predator of the Cambrian. Jumping forward through time once again, we arrive at the Ordovician period. Throughout most of this era, animal life remained confined to the oceans, but it appears that the first basic land plants became established partway through the period. Enormous nautiloids inhabited the prehistoric waters, and the emergence of eurypterids meant that the Ordovician seas were still very much the domain of the invertebrates, with these large predators occupying the top positions in the ancient food webs. With little else to truly challenge the largest nautiloids for the position of apex predators, these unnervingly large mollusks would likely have had full reign over most other organisms inhabiting the Ordovician sea floors. The giant cephalopods of the Ordovician are often referred to as orthocones. However, this is more of an informal term that specifically describes the anatomy of their shells, long, straight, and cone-shaped, in contrast to the spiraling shells of other nautiloids, as we see in the living species. The maximum sizes for the Ordovician orthoconic nautiloids have also been somewhat exaggerated in popular media, probably most famously in the Walking with Dinosaurs spin-off Chased by Sea Monsters, in which an orthocone is reconstructed as being up to 11 meters in length, or up to 36 feet. This length estimate likely stems from an unconfirmed report of a 10-meter long specimen, but unfortunately there's a notable lack of evidence supporting the actual existence of this particular fossil, and it was apparently lost a long time ago. However, there are still some absolutely enormous confirmed orthocones, such as a specimen in Harvard University's collection referred to the species Endosaurus giganteum that reached 3 meters in length, or 9.8 feet. This fossil is only partial, however, and reconstructing the whole length has yielded an estimated total of 5.73 meters or 18.8 feet for the complete shell. So it's not hard to imagine giant Endosaurus individuals floating over the seafloor, picking up prey along the bottom with their mighty arms and crunching with their formidable beaks. The Ordovician oceans also witnessed the origin of a group we'll be seeing more of in the next 2 time periods, the eurypterids, the so-called sea scorpions, which, although they are arthropods, were not scorpions at all. They also were not restricted to just the sea either. The oldest eurypterid discovered so far was found in Iowa, and it was a pretty big beast too. Called Pentecopterus, it has an estimated length of around 1.7 meters or 5.6 feet, and it was undoubtedly a top predator within its environment, with large front limbs that were oriented to point forward for grappling prey. Although Pentecopterus was the biggest eurypterid from the Ordovician we've found so far, they were about to get a whole lot larger, as we'll see. The Silurian period truly was the time of the Eurypterids. These fascinating arthropods became remarkably diverse, with numerous species recognised from across the world. Most of the known Eurypterids have been found in rocks dating to the Silurian, filling various niches as generalist hunters, scavengers, and large apex predators. These creatures were clearly crucial components of Silurian ecosystems. One of the biggest Silurian Eurypterids found so far is called Anteosaurus bohemicus, with an estimated maximum length of around 2.1 meters or 6.9 feet. This species lived right at the very end of the Silurian and turns up in the following Devonian period as well. It belongs to a very specialized group of Eurypterids called the pterygotids. It had a long, fairly slender body, a squared-off head, and well-developed chelicerae, the pincer-bearing arms at the front. Along with other pterygotids, Anteosaurus was probably quite an agile swimmer, propelling itself with its paddle limbs and using its flattened tail as a rudder to enable sudden changes in direction. However, it's not certain if pterygotids were particularly fast when it came to sustained swimming. It was undoubtedly a feared predator in the Silurian seas though, feasting on the unfortunate smaller invertebrates and perhaps also jawless fishes it shared its environment with, engaging the vicious-looking denticles projecting from its chelicerae to dismantle its victims. But although the Silurian was still mostly the realm of the giant invertebrate predators, the vertebrates, the group that would eventually give rise to our own ancestors, were actually producing some sizable predators as well. Up until 2014, there was no evidence of any Silurian fishes achieving maximum lengths of more than about half a meter, or around 1.6 feet. But then, Megamastax amblyodus was discovered in 423 million-year-old rocks in China. This animal was over a meter in length, more than 3.3 feet, making it the largest vertebrate to have lived before the Devonian period, as far as we currently know. This predatory lobe-finned fish had an interesting combination of different tooth types. Like other related Silurian fishes, it had rows of fine, very sharp marginal teeth spanning the edges of the jaws. But unlike these relatives, it also had a row of blunted, dome-shaped teeth fused onto the insides of the lower jaws. It looks like these differing tooth types helped the fish to grasp hard-shelled prey in its mouth, and then crunch down on them with the larger blunted teeth to get to their insides. Perhaps then it was feeding on the heavily armoured fishes it coexisted with, representing the earliest vertebrate apex predator in the fossil record. Megamastax was certainly a sign of things to come, as the following period saw the rise of the first truly terrifying vertebrate top predators. The Devonian period was when vertebrate life really started to take off. There's a reason this period is often referred to as the Age of Fishes. These animals achieved a staggering diversity, with now extinct armoured fish, called the placoderms, giving rise to some formidable apex predator species. Ancient shark and ray relatives diversified during this period too, and the ancestors of the land-living tetrapods, which later gave rise to mammals such as us, also became a distinct branch within lobe-finned fishes and began to experiment with terrestrial life towards the latter parts of the period. Life on land started to become more established around this time too, as the first true forests appeared, and the world became a greener place. Of course, we can't talk about apex predators of the Devonian without mentioning the dunk. Dunkleosteus is an iconic giant armoured fish that terrorised the Devonian seas, and although recent publications have found that it's a little smaller than previous size estimates indicated, it was still probably not something you'd want to get in the water with. The largest known species, Dunkleosteus terrelli, likely reached a maximum length of around 4.1 meters, or about 13.5 feet, and the anatomy of its armored head and jaws leaves little room for doubt that this was a fearsome apex hunter. I mean, just look at the fossil material itself. How insane does that head look? Dunkleosteus had unique jaw biomechanics that enabled the predator to open and close its jaws extremely rapidly, and deliver bite forces estimated at over 7,400 newtons, remarkably high for a fish. These forces drove the menacing-looking dental plates together, not true teeth but bladed projections of bone ideally suited for shearing actions. Recent reinterpretations of this iconic predator have left it looking far more deep and stocky than older reconstructions presented it. This suggests that it was a truly pelagic animal, roaming across the open Devonian seas and swimming in a tuniform style. a fast and efficient mode of locomotion. Dunkleosteus was likely capable of quick bursts of rapid acceleration and was a highly maneuverable fish, making it difficult for its prey to escape those bladed plates of death. Other armoured placoderm fish would also have been top predators during the Devonian, with examples such as the dunk's close relative, Eastmanosteus, also growing to quite sizable dimensions and wielding nasty-looking toothy blades. As well as vertebrates, the Eurypterids were still going in the Devonian too. In fact, it was during the Devonian that the largest Eurypterid we know of, which also makes it the largest arthropod we know of, existed. This was Jacalopterus, another member of the specialised pterygotid family of sea scorpions. Going off an enormous isolated claw belonging to Jacalopterus found in the early Devonian of Germany, paleontologists scaled up the size of the animal this claw would have belonged to using the dimensions of related species. They found that this enormous Jacalopterus potentially reached between 2.3 and 2.6 meters in length, or 7.5 to 8.5 feet. Truly a monstrous aquatic arthropod. Interestingly, Jacalopterus appears to have been a freshwater Eurypterid, so even the rivers of this time weren't safe to venture into. Things only got deadlier during the following Carboniferous period. Once life on land was fully established, whole new ecosystems opened up, and the evolution of apex predators at the tops of these terrestrial and freshwater food chains was inevitable. The invertebrates, being the first animals to commit to the land, produced some pretty formidable predators in the Carboniferous, such as the rather large Pulmonoscorpius, which was indeed a true scorpion, not a Eurypterid, and could reach up to 70 centimeters or 2.3 feet in length. But really, this was the time when the apex vertebrate predators started to shine. A kind of early relative of the tetrapods called Watcheria deltae may have been among the first of the vertebrate top predators in freshwater terrestrial habitats, even being called the T-Rex of its time by some paleontologists, as this beast could grow to more than 2 meters in length and had a reinforced narrow skull perfect for resisting struggling prey, along with very sharp, piercing fangs in its jaws. The early Carboniferous Watcheria would likely still have been restricted to spending most of its time in lakes or rivers, though its robust limbs likely meant it could walk along the bottom of the riverbeds or perhaps even wade in the shallows. Another group of early tetrapod relatives that included a few pretty large predators are the Embolomeres, which appeared in the early Carboniferous and radiated into quite a few species during the latter part of the period. These were again semi-aquatic, mostly freshwater animals with some indications that certain members could have undertaken short excursions onto land. So kind of big amphibian-like versions of modern crocs. Makes sense why the Carboniferous is sometimes called the Age of Amphibians. Anthracosaurus is one embolomere that grew to some rather large dimensions, with estimates of its body length reaching about 3 meters or 10 feet. Another is Proterogerynus, potentially up to 2.5 meters long or over 8 feet. Fossils of this species preserve evidence of strong limbs and other indications that they could probably walk on land too. Rhizodus was another pretty terrifying apex predator of the Carboniferous. Also a freshwater inhabitant, Rhizodus was a lobe-finned fish, and therefore related to the broader group that gave rise to the tetrapods. It's been estimated to have reached lengths of more than 5.5 meters, or over 18 feet. Some estimates also go as far as 7 meters, or 23 feet, meaning Rhizodus was potentially the largest freshwater fish known to science. These elongate aquatic vertebrates were another reason not to take a dip in the Carboniferous rivers, patrolling these waterways and employing their elongate curved teeth to dispatch smaller animals, perhaps even launching out of the water like a modern croc at unsuspecting animals on riverbanks. The deeper waters of the Carboniferous wouldn't have offered much sanctuary from apex hunters either. The cartilaginous fishes, the group that includes the sharks and rays, produced a couple of big top predators, such as Edestus, a great white shark-sized fish with blade-like teeth that grew in a midline wall out of the jaws. Similarly, Orthocanthus was a cartilaginous fish that inhabited freshwaters and grew to be almost 3 meters, and with its long eel-like body and spine projecting out of its back, would have been a top predator of Carboniferous swamp environments. Truly, the Carboniferous was a terrifying period to be a small amphibious tetrapod. The next period, the Permian, would have been an even worse time, however. During the early Permian, one group of now fully terrestrial tetrapods gave rise to some fearsome apex predators, the sphenacodontids, which includes the iconic Dimetrodon. Although this sail-backed animal is often called a dinosaur, it is actually a synapsid, the same highly diverse group of tetrapods to which mammals belong. So it's more closely related to mammals such as us than to dinosaurs. Don't let those tubes of toy prehistoric animals fool you. The largest species of Dimetrodon discovered in Texas could grow to about 4.6 meters long, or around 15 feet, and with its sharp, specialized and serrated teeth, it would have been a deadly killer of other tetrapods. In fact, we have some good evidence of Dimetrodon's feeding habits in the form of unfortunate specimens of the strange little boomerang-headed amphibians Diplocaulus, which have chunks taken out of them. Associated with these bitten amphibians were shed teeth from Dimetrodon, indicating that these top predators were snacking on Diplocaulus that had burrowed into mud to survive the dry seasons. So again, it was not an ideal time to be a small amphibian. Another possible relative of Dimetrodon, a poorly known species called Tapanosaurus, was likely also a top predator of the mid-Permian, with one estimate putting its length at about 5.5 meters or 18 feet. However, it's only known from fragmentary fossils. The mid-Permian terrestrial environments were undoubtedly ruled by the Dinocephalians. This remarkably diverse lineage was another group of synapsids, so again related to mammals, and actually closer to them than the sphenacodontids were. The Dinocephalians can be thought of as, in a way, like dinosaurs before the dinosaurs. Various small and large herbivorous, omnivorous and carnivorous species evolved and filled a range of terrestrial niches. However, they all went extinct by the end of the mid-Permian, 260 million years ago. Moschops is probably the most well-known example, a large plant eater. But it was the massive carnivores such as Anteosaurus and Titanophonius that made this such a deadly group. Titanophonius, which literally means Titanic murderer, was potentially 3 to 5 meters long, while Anteosaurus, at around 5 to possibly 6 meters, is the largest known carnivorous land predator of the Permian found so far. This thing's skull was insane, being extremely pachyostotic or thickened by bone, and also featuring prominent bosses and wielding huge canines as well as extra teeth on the roof of the mouth. This apex hunter would likely have preyed on other Dinocephalians, reptilian pariasaurs, and smaller tetrapods. After the mid-Permian extinctions, it was then time for the Gorgonopsians to take center stage. Everyone loves the Gorgonopsians. These synapsids, which were again even more closely related to the ancestors of mammals than the Dinocephalians, yielded some awesome top predators during the late Permian, such as the enormous Inostrancevia, measuring 3 to 3.5 meters, 9.8 to 11.5 feet, and the large, heavily built Rubigia. Like Anteosaurus, Rubigia had a remarkably pachyostotic skull, characterized by significant bone thickening to strengthen it for inflicting powerful bites. The Gorgonopsians are probably most famous for their saber teeth, which evolved convergently with much later saber-toothed cat predators. Like the cats that lived millions of years later, these deadly weapons would have been sunk deep into their prey's flesh, driven by powerful neck muscles. And they also seemed very well adapted for grasping prey with their fore and hind limbs. Various other large predatory species emerged among the lineages that diverged just before the mammal ancestors separated. One notable example is Moscarinus, a macropredator that lived right at the end of the Permian and actually outlived the Gorgonopsians, making it into the early Triassic through the end Permian mass extinction, or Great Dying, the most severe extinction in Earth's history. Moscarinus was a robust creature with a short, stocky snout, and its different proportions compared to the Gorgonopsians likely allowed them to coexist as top predators, and seemingly enabled Moscarinus to outlive them as well. Returning to the waters, the early and mid-Permian was also home to Helicoprion, the buzzsaw shark. Well, not actually a shark, despite it often being called that, but a cartilaginous fish related to modern chimeras. A relative of Edestus, Helicoprion's tooth walls took on a spiral arrangement within the lower jaw and were suited for consuming soft-bodied prey, with teeth at the back cutting and pushing prey further into the mouth, middle teeth piercing and cutting, and the front teeth being used to hook more of the prey into the mouth. Helicoprion has been estimated to have reached a maximum of 7 meters or nearly 23 feet in length too. So this was one rather large buzzsaw attached to a giant fish. finally, we arrive in the Triassic period, the first period of the Mesozoic era, and the slice of time during which the first dinosaurs evolved. The oldest dinosaurs would have originated sometime between about 245 and 233 million years ago, in the Middle Triassic. But the early Triassic was home to all sorts of non-dinosaurian apex predators. The Permian-Triassic boundary was marked by a devastating mass extinction driven by intense volcanic activity, and so many of the niches in the early Triassic world were open for different groups of animals to exploit. The Archosauromorph reptiles were one such group, a major lineage that includes all the crocs and dinosaurs, as well as numerous other diverse extinct groups. The Proterosuchids, which had originated in the Permian and survived the extinction, managed to grow fairly big in the early Triassic and produced some top predators, such as Proterosuchus itself, which could get to a maximum length of up to 4 meters or over 13 feet. These sprawling reptiles would have looked quite crocodilian-like and were likely semi-aquatic, but they lacked bony skin armor like modern crocs, and they had distinctive downturned snout tips. Exactly what the function of this overhanging upper jaw tip was is not clear, but proposed explanations have included a signaling function to potential mates, kind of like in modern salmon, or maybe some sort of unusual feeding method. The Erythrosuchids were another of the first large archosauromorph land predators to evolve in the Triassic. Disproportionately massively headed quadrupedal reptiles with bulky bodies and also with downturned snout tips. These reptiles likely had quite upright standing postures, rather than possessing sprawling gaits, and so would have been efficient terrestrial stalkers. The largest known member, Erythrosuchus, was the biggest land predator of the time, approaching 5 meters long, or nearly 16.4 feet. Another Archosaurian lineage with some large predatory species in the early and mid-Triassic was the family Tenosauriscidae. This was a fantastic group of reptiles, continuing with the trend of possessing a sail along the back that we also saw in the Permian Dimetrodon, and which would much later be copied again by the Spinosaurs. Arizonosaurus is perhaps the most well-known member of the group. These quadrupedal archosaurs potentially used their sails for displaying to other members of their species, and at the sizes they reached were probably fairly top-level predators for their time. Heading once more back into the seas of the world before the dinosaurs, the mid-Triassic was no time to take a dip. Living around 244 million years ago was an enormous ichthyosaur called Symbospondylus youngorum, which had a skull measuring about 2 meters, 6.6 feet, and a probable total length of more than 17 meters, or 55.8 feet. This sperm whale-sized predator can be considered the planet's first super predator, feeding on fish, cephalopods, and probably taking out smaller marine reptiles if it wanted to. Also in the mid-Triassic, another apex ichthyosaur predator is known to have existed, Thalattoarchon. At an estimated length of more than 8.6 meters or 28 feet, Thalattoarchon has a massive skull, and tooth anatomy indicating it was most certainly a macropredator, with flattened teeth possessing distinct cutting surfaces for tearing through flesh. So it didn't take long after the Great Dying for life in the sea to get giant and produce some truly awesome reptilian top predators. More giant ichthyosaurs would evolve later on in the Triassic, and back on land, various other groups of archosauromorph lineages related to the crocs also produced massive apex terrestrial predators during the late Triassic, such as the Prestosuchids, Rauisuchids, Shuvosaurids, and Poposaurids. However, they were living alongside the dinosaurs at this point in time. So this brings us pretty much to the end of the apex predators of Earth before the dinosaurs. So there we have it, a trip through time, exploring various of the world's most ancient hunters. I also just want to note that it's important to remember that every single one of the apex predators I've talked about here was ideally suited to its environment and lifestyle, and we shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking of the predators in each time period as somehow becoming better compared to the ones in previous periods. It's sometimes hard not to think about the prehistory of life on Earth as a long progression of animals improving over time, especially from our vantage point in the present day, looking back over the whole fossil record. But evolution doesn't work like that. Each predator was the result of various selection pressures acting on populations in existence at the time, as they responded to changes in the environment and food webs, leading to lineages modifying and building upon their ancestral body plans. I'm sure I've probably missed some species in this video that count as apex predators of their time, but I hope this has been a worthwhile overview of the awesome carnivores that existed on our planet before the dinosaurs. If you liked this video, let me know if you'd like another one, perhaps looking at the apex predators that lived after the dinosaurs, or even non-dinosaur apex predators that lived alongside the dinosaurs. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to my other channel, 7 Days of Science. Over on this channel, my co-presenters and I make weekly videos covering all the most fascinating science news of the past week. So if you'd like a good way to keep up to date with the latest discoveries, you might like what we do over there. We also have a Patreon page where you can support us in return for some fun bonus content. Please do like this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it, and be sure to press that bell icon so you don't miss our next upload, and so you can learn more about our world, its history, and the wonderful life that surrounds us all.